To
This
be here.
conference
Thank
will
you.
now be recorded.
All right, it's wonderful to be here. I'm talking to you from Canada, and it's sunny today, and it's over 0 degrees Celsius, so we're thrilled. Um, it makes it a good day here. So I work with a company called Miovision, and Miovision does data collection both through some impermanent and permanent video detection systems, and then we do a lot of data processing. Rudy and I were just talking about one application, which is around safety, for instance. We do a lot of turning movement counts, reports, as well as we deal a lot with signal performance measures and helping cities understand how they can manage their traffic signals for better efficiency and safety for citizens. So the question I want to put out to all of you today is around technology, actually, in the use of technology. What I'm curious about is what technologies have you adopted, or what practices with your technologies have you adopted during this work from home time or this COVID, the response to COVID, that is helping you to continue to do your job or to adapt to the situations. So I'll give you a brief overview at Miovision. We work all together, but we've now gone to a work from home model. Only our manufacturing facility is deemed an essential service, so those folks are working. But tools like we're using now, with using Zoom or Google Hangouts, things like Slack, like chat channels, have become really popular. And I find what I like is there's almost a personality that some of those tools have taken on, as individuals are throwing on little memes or little jokes through the day. One of the ways that we've started to use this kind of a connection service is even for like a happy hour. So not just doing work, but actually, as Pam said, the ability to see people's faces and engage makes it feel a little bit more like we actually are still connected and working together. And one of the benefits I've noted is that it's actually gotten us to be a little bit more communicative, like distinctly communicative. So we maybe have made assumptions in the past when we've had a conversation face to face about what do we mean by the date this project is due or not due. We've had to be extremely explicit about that, and I actually think it's improved productivity. So that's, maybe one of the benefits or silver linings that we've learned about. So I'm interested sort of within your own practices, but I also want to tell a quick story about, so we work with cities and municipalities. One of the ways that we've seen the evolution of a municipality use technology in response to this crisis. And so one of the cities that we work with is starting to set up field testing stations. And the folks who are in the field testing stations are feeling a lot of stress and pressure. What they've set up is the capacity to do about 1,000 tests a day. It's a drive-through center. And there are actually a number of drive-through centers that are being set up in the city. But nobody in the city knows if they are successful. So the definition of, are we actually serving the public to the best of our ability? Are we getting to 1,000 tests a day? How long are people waiting? Are people driving around and actually putting other people at risk because they are having to go from one center to the next if they feel like they're waiting? And so it's actually the traffic department that's responsible for setting up these testing stations. And so the traffic department has said, what would be really valuable is to actually have access to data about what's happening. And so they're looking to use the video cameras that they're using for instance, intersections, and repositioning those cameras at these testing stations and being able to, number one, provide some information to the folks in the testing stations who have noted that their morale is kind of up and down because they don't know that. What they know is they're endeavoring to do 1,000 tests a day. If they don't get there, is that a good day? Is that not a good day? It's 10 o'clock in the morning and they don't know if they have 1,000 cars lined up or not. And so their own sense of anxiety, but also the morale of the group, is quite impacted by, they've said, if we had some information about what was happening outside, and they're in a testing facility where they actually can't see onto the street, so they don't know what the queue looks like or what the line looks like. But they said, if we've even just had information about how long is that queue, how many patients have we tested already, it's a bit of like, hey, you're doing a good job. We're halfway there. We've done 500, or it's only 3 o'clock and we've already done 750. That kind of feedback is an important piece of actually motivating the heroes. I have such respect for the healthcare workers right now. I could cry every time I think about it. But of motivating and providing real-time feedback to those folks that are putting themselves on the front line for all of us. But also for the city to start to say, hey, have we set this up properly? Are people going in through the outdoor? Is there confusion? Is this as efficient as possible? And is it efficient in a way that allows people to respect social distancing? And so to be able to use video evidence in a whole new way to manage this crisis appropriately. And my hat's off to the really creative traffic engineers in that city who are thinking about using that. It's challenging us, so we're doing some work with the city to try to come up with those reports. It's challenging our team to say, hey, how do we creatively come up with being able to provide that information? But I think it's, you know, I've been extremely impressed with the flexibility and the creativity that I've seen, but technology is an important aspect of that sort of response that I've seen to the crisis. So I just wanted to share that and put it out to others to say, what are you seeing or what are you experiencing? One, I would suggest, you know, if anybody else has access to video data, pass this on to cities as a way of being creative and helping to motivate and manage the crisis. But also, I'd invite what other good ideas are out there and how can we share that broadly within our community to help cities manage what's happening right now.
Thank you, Erin. I thought that was a very interesting topic. And so now we will open it up to conversation. And again, just a reminder for those who feel comfortable and have the capability, please open up your webcams and unmute yourself. I'm going to actually send this out to Randy just to get us started off. If you want to provide some comments on what Erin was talking about.
Yeah, I sure do. I think it's very interesting. There's lots of opportunity here in terms of getting collateral benefit out of infrastructure that we're planning for other purposes, but repurposing it in a way that meets the overall intent, which is to improve the performance and safety of our transportation system. And at this point in time, there's a lot of things that we're learning, you know, day by day as we go by in terms of information. I know Mary Smith posted on the e-community just a reuse of how to lay out a parking lot to maximize space for testing for queuing space, that just took a parking aisle of a standard 60 or 65-foot bay and turned it into 5 rows of queued storage and then service bays of how you could do that in just, you know, like a heartbeat. And so there's lots of ideas out there, and I think the more people have been out and heard or seen, the more we can share, the better off, you know, all of our members are positioned to serve their communities, their employers, and their teams better.
Yeah. I'm just taking a note about Mary's post, and we'll share that with the city we're working with. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, comments, what other people are seeing in their communities or experiencing personally as we're moving remotely?
I'll just add, while people are thinking about different things, having been involved in the highway safety era and transportation safety since 1970, probably one of the oldest folks around. That's why I've been sheltering in place since the 1st of March. When they said, shut her down, and the elderly, and they said, oh man, I'm not elderly. Oh, yes, you are, Rudy. You are elderly. I don't feel that way, but I am. So I'm at risk. And so I've been hunkering down here and staying in communication. I left the Washington office 13 years ago to go to our field office in Chicago. And then I basically worked remotely from home. So I've had 13 years experience of what you guys are doing now. Sheltering in place at home. I would go out to the field, would go to the airport, go back. But most of our meetings were online like this. I did training online, did a lot of training online, learned a lot of things about how long attention spans are. About 45 minutes is about all you're going to get when in a meeting. So after that, you might as well shut her down. One of the things that I found when I was doing road safety assessments is being able to see from a bird's eye view what was happening. And I learned this from one of my old bosses, Clark Bennett, who he must have started in 1940. You know, he was old. They used to get on the top of the old RFK Stadium in DC when the Redskins were playing there with binoculars. And he was a traffic engineer for the city of, for DC. And that's how they would direct what was going on. They would watch it with binoculars and then report down to, and this is back in the 60s, report down to how the traffic is flowing, what's happening, where the backups are, so they could adjust immediately. So I took, you know, that when I was doing road safety assessments and other things to get a bird's eye view of what's happening. That's why I think this video of watching what's happening is so critical and necessary, because I'll see what's happening, or I'll go on somebody's cam site and see what's the traffic going on I-94 or I-95, just for the fun of it. You can see backups and so on. When I lived in DC, I lived adjacent to the Shirley Highway, which was the main artery going into DC. I would sit there as a nerdy traffic engineer, safety engineer, and watch crashes occur. I could see the backups occurring. I could see how they were going just from my living room studio. And you could actually say, there's a crash going to occur. You could see it develop before it happened by how the cars were going. It's like a billiard ball. You hit the ball, you can see how it goes. So the thing that was interesting is to watch it from above. And I think that we need to use more of the video of, rather than just getting information from the intersection to judge red lights or whatever, but to judge how it's operating. Is it operating the way we want? And I was down in near Hollandale, north of Fort Lauderdale, and an example, we were asked to do a road safety assessment on one of the roads. And I thought, we need a bird's eye view. So I went to the hotel in advance and said, I need 2 rooms, top floor, looking at both ends of the road. And the guy said, yeah, sure. You know, I explained. So we had 2 rooms. My colleague was in one room, I was in another room, and we could watch the roadway as during the day and at night. And one of the things that they had was a drawbridge. And I talked to the drawbridge people, and they were saying they were getting complaints that they were screwing up the traffic control and backing up people over the drawbridge and all sorts of things. Well, we looked at that, and from our bird's eye view, we found out that there was a traffic signal downstream from the drawbridge that was running rogue. It would go red with cars, without cars, at any time at all. It would just turn red for absolutely no reason. And we could then see the backup occur. And then we could report out, it wasn't the bridge, it was this rogue traffic signal that was just operating improperly, that was creating all of the traffic problems along this route. We would have never seen that had we done a bird's eye view. So I think we can use this opportunity to expand our observations of the roadway, rather than go out and sit on do a conflict analysis or take notes, to actually do it from a camera remotely. Set up a camera on a roadway or pedestrians, or see how the pedestrians are operating. This is where a city could just go and say, how are pedestrians flowing? You know, I'll look at New York, the Times Square, which there's cameras all over. there's nobody on Times Square, but it's usually packed. So the issue then becomes when we do have issues with people trying to go out for walking, like in parks and that, we need to see where people are. I think that your idea of using the cameras to let people know what's happening is outstanding, and we need to use those cameras more and be more versatile and take a bigger swing at what's going on. So that's something we got to get out to the people, to not just use the cameras to observe, to have them set, to be able to move them around. When we do like pedestrian studies or whatever, you can look from above, you can see a much more from above than you can down there. You can see the traffic flow. So let us proceed with that and get that information out, come up with innovative ways to analyze a site without being there, and then to be able to react quickly.
You know, I just to add, the Oregon section had a SimCap meeting that they have a group that gets together every few months and talks about issues. And one of the topics they were talking about was utilizing some of the data sources that are out there, from Streetlight to NREX, and how they best are utilized in different ways. But you know, some of the things that were really interesting, and those are cool, and there's tons of them out. There's well beyond just NREX and Streetlight. And one of the things they did was they were talking about using Google Traffic, in which is just, you know, on your screen, but there's some little tips and tricks that they passed along. And probably the one that I thought was the most interesting is you can pull on Google Traffic, and it's not the perfect, you know, status of queuing on highways and where things are backed up, but provides a pretty good, you know, tool. You wouldn't want to be the only source of information. It's just another data point. But they mentioned a website, I think it was called Blint, that you can basically program like a schedule, almost like your calendar. You can program to have it screen capture various routes or different locations on the Google Traffic. And so, for example, the last, I'll be doing this at 5 o'clock today. I've been grabbing the West Coast major metropolitan areas and getting the screen capture of the Google Traffic conditions. And basically this automates it. You can just schedule it up, and it produces a bunch of, I think, PNG files, or I don't think they're JPEGs, but it produces a bunch of files that you can just download off the cloud. And so it gives you those images at different points in time, and you can schedule it at 15-minute periods if you want to do analytics on, you know, queuing that may be occurring in a short-term basis, or you can do that, you know, just periodically over the week, you know, like I'm doing every Friday or Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So I'd never heard of that one. That was a new one on me. So Blint is a nice way to recapture that data. I mean, you can clearly go in and get the analytics from Google, but you would devote a tremendous amount of time gathering that data and working it to get the same thing as just a screen capture. And having somebody, I don't know if people have enough interns to be able to sit them all down and say, screen capture now. And this automates that. So something to look at if you're looking at information like that.
Randy, can I ask a follow-on question to that?
Sure.
So you're collecting that information, and then, you know, clearly you're pulling some insight from that. How do you share that information to make that valuable?
Right now, I've just been posting basically to LinkedIn and Facebook as just a means to get out. And a lot of it was just to sort of see how the transition. I was in LA in on March 10th through 13th. And while I was there, all of this sort of unraveled all at once. And so it was sort of like, you know, it was rainy weather, and normally rainy weather in LA would have caused, you know, storm tracker coverage and flooded freeways, and, you know, they'd be deriding Caltrans for not maintaining the highways. And that was like that much coverage at that point. And the reality is, I mean, Caltrans was doing a great job, and the highways were working, you know, reasonably well at that time. But clearly, we had no idea at that moment what we were about to see happen in the peaks. And as you go from basically, what was, I think, the 12th of March to the 18th of March to the 30th or thereabouts. If you go, you know, through the weeks, you can see very quickly how the transition is. You know, what we're going to do with this, I'm not sure. We did a similar thing with the eclipse up here in Oregon and across the country, and we're gathering data. And I think it was really useful afterwards to sort of look at after the event, what could we do in terms of transportation management? And I think we're definitely, I mean, we're talking about another stimulus package, which will involve infrastructure. And I mean, people are going to ask the gorilla in the room question, gee, if everybody can work from home and we don't need capacity, why do we need all this highway building? I mean, we have to be able to answer questions like that. So having the information is important. You know, the stimulus bill, just so people don't think I'm anti-stimulus on infrastructure, frankly, needs to be focused on safety and maintenance, fix it first, and interstate commerce. And capacity is a local issue. People want to have open freeways or build 10-lane freeways. In Southern California, they do, and they build them and they paid for them. Bully, good on them. But that's not the national. The national objectives are, we've got some facilities to maintain, we need to make them safe, and we need our economic commerce and the mobility that it provides to be effective for everyone in the country. So I think, you know, learning from those lessons, I mean, obviously we're not going to go to this extent of traffic management. I put it this way, we don't want to have a recession, we don't want to have a pandemic to have these kinds of outcomes. That's not what we want. But we clearly can learn, and some of the technologies that are being, you know, exercised now, people that had access to them are now fully utilizing them in ways, you know, I mean, just Zoom is a good example. I think people that had Zoom around really weren't using it to that great of effect. Boy, that sucker, Fridays at 5 o'clock, those suckers are being used by a lot of people now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of happy hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the infrastructure stimulus bill is going to happen. It happens every time. The president was talking about it yesterday. I thought, yep, here it comes. And the important thing for all the states and cities to do is have the stuff ready. Have the plans ready to go, because they're going to call that shovel ready, just like we've done every time. It cycles about every 7 years we do something. The bills used to be about every 7 years. I think they've gone longer now, but basically it's the same thing. Have it ready, because they want to be able to obligate that money immediately. So the word needs to get out that get your projects ready. If you're going to have a project, have it ready, because when the money starts flowing, it's going to go fast. And what they're going to say is, you have so much time to obligate that money, state. And if you don't, we're going to pull that money and send it to another state who can obligate the money. And so there'll be this fight going on, but it always
we learned that. I think with the ARA program, that was really key. And I think for folks, you know, it's like the Three Little Pigs story. You know, you build your house of sticks and straw, and then you get your bricks. Well, the folks that have got plans, the folks that have got projects, the folks that have looked at safety in detail and didn't have funding for their safety projects, the ones that have done those homework, have done those highway safety improvement plans and have their projects ready, I hope they are rewarded with projects through this stimulus. I mean, we need to be able to move fast for the economic purposes, but the design work, if we're not doing that right now, we need to be putting a full throttle down, because that's where the money's going to go to shovel ready work. And we've got plenty of it. And literally, if we just characterized it in those three areas nationwide: safety, maintenance, fix it first, and economic interstate commerce, we have plenty. We have plenty of great things that we can make happen and align with, you know, objectives like Vision Zero and other things in our industry. So the opportunity's there right now.
Yeah. I think your point, Randy, too, of saying, hey, you've got access to information that already can demonstrate where is the repair that's needed to fix it first. What about economic, you know, interstate economic ideas? And from a safety perspective, there's more and more data available to be demonstrating where there may be safety issues. Where do you have to be putting resources to improve safety? That helps to prepare a good quantified plan to the government to attract resources.
I think we're better positioned now than we were 10 years ago in 2008, 2010, when this was all going down the last time.
Right. And Oregon has been a leader in Troy. Worked with Troy for a while. He was the head of the safety program there, governor's rep. Always a leader in what's going on, being ahead of the game, being ahead of the curve, to have your stuff prepared. One of the things that traffic engineers struggled with a lot was when bridge engineers would come, they would say, here's my bridge deficiency ratings. And they have a stack of bridge deficiencies, and the executives could see that here's this big stack and here's this money and this is where, and traffic engineers would come and say, I need $1 million or $500,000 or whatever. And what are you going to use it on? Oh, I'm going to do signs. Well, show me. Or they need, and that's why we strive for the sign inventory program. So they had this stuff. So you need to have your inventories and your documentation ready to say, here's my need better than anybody, as good as anybody else's need.
Yeah.
And the traffic area is always lagged. We've always just done it on a shoestring for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, we're getting near the half hour point where
we are.
Is there any last words of wisdom for everybody?
No, I really appreciate, I think looking on the post to see if there are other examples of how current infrastructure or technology is being repurposed, for to help deal with the crisis of the moment. But Randy, I really appreciate you saying, hey, as we look ahead, there are other applications that if we're planning now, we're going to be really well positioned to be ready for when the stimulus packages do come down the pike. And I appreciate that. I think it's a good opportunity for us to think about extricating the most value we can from the technologies and data that we have available now.
Yeah, I think they're going to be put to the test here real quick. And I think we have great opportunities for folks that are able to master that kind of information and use it to advantage. I think it'll be very valuable for those folks in the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
One of the things we need to get the people who are in grad school or just out of grad school who are savvy in this stuff. We don't need guys who started the Federal Highway Administration in 1970 looking at this. Young kids, and get a list of the things that they're doing at the universities that they just kind of screw around with, as we did when we were young and had whatever. But the technology is far surpassing what us old people had, and even the middle-aged people. I mean, we need to get the young folks out there, ITE members, the new list of ITE members. Those are the people that we need to tap and pick their brains and have them train us on how to do the latest stuff.
They're using simulators and drones and all kinds of things that they were a dream world for folks when I was going to school.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting, Randy, that you wrote about 2062 in your blog today for the journal.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the future. Well, I am going to go ahead, since it is the bottom of the hour. I do want to honor the time. But Erin, thank you so much. I thought your topic was really interesting. And Randy and Rudy, thank you for coming in on the conversation, and everybody else who joined us today. This recording will be available on the YouTube channel later this evening. It does take a little bit for GoToMeeting to process this, and it will also be available on the ITE member forum, where, as been mentioned, there's a wide range of topics around COVID-19 and these virtual sessions. So please continue the conversation there, and talk to everybody soon.
Thank you.
So long.
I know.